Good evening, you're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. It's a tough chapter for Indian cricket. Some would call it a dark chapter. South Africa today scripted history in Guwahati, crushing India by a staggering 408 runs in the second test. This is India's biggest defeat ever by margins. Chasing an improbable 549, India folded for 140, with Simon Harmer's 6-wicket haul sealing a 2-0 whitewash. South Africa's first series triumph on Indian soil in 25 years. Now this follows last week's collapse in Kolkata. It exposes the batting fragility that's claimed 2 home whitewashes in as many years. First to New Zealand, now the Proteas. Under head coach Gautam Gambhir, appointed in July 2024 after Rahul Dravid's exit, India's test fortunes have plummeted. In 19 matches, they've won just 7 and lost 10 with a dismal overall win rate. Now this is the worst for any Indian coach in 25 years, even eclipsing Greg Chappell's turbulent era. Now Gambhir's aggressive tactics have shown in white ball cricket, to be sure, clinching the 2025 Champions Trophy and Asia Cup, but red ball cricket reveals a transition gone awry. Over-reliance perhaps on unproven youth, muddled selections, it is said, and a spin attack lacking bite on turning tracks, and a vulnerability, it seems, to batting against spin. Post-match, Gambhir shouldered the blame. He said, "It starts with me," yet defiantly cited past glories, leaving his fate to the cricket board, the BCCI. We ask, should he be replaced? Is that really what this is all about? And this is not about getting Gautam Gambhir, it's about asking that question, one among many. But first, what we'd like to do is just come out with our first statistic. And this actually shows you, gives you an idea of what we are talking about. These numbers don't lie. Now, in 19 test matches that he's been coached in, from July 2024 onwards, India have won 7, we have lost 10, including 2 home series, one against South Africa now, and earlier on against New Zealand. New Zealand has had an abysmal test record lately in India. South Africa haven't been the great champions in Indian conditions. We've lost 2 series against those 2 sides. We've drawn 2 test matches. That's a win percentage of 36.84%. Let's move to the next graphic. But before that, let's take a look at this. The series wins, right? This is where India has done well against weaker opposition, Bangladesh and the West Indies. But we've lost in India and outside against New Zealand 0-3. That's still unbelievable. Australia 1-3, South Africa 0-2. These are series results where India has not done well. But now this is something that we need to keep in mind. When we do talk about Gautam Gambhir, he has an excellent one-day record, the Champions Trophy 2025 winners. Let's never forget about his contribution in one-day cricket. And in T20s, India has been consistently successful. We've had series wins against Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and South Africa as well. But what I'd like to do is go to our next graphic, and that actually tells you about what it was when you compare Test match cricket with Rahul Dravid, who was coached 2021 to 2023, and Shastri earlier on. Now, Ravi Shastri had a win percentage of 52.63%. That really was a golden era of Indian cricket. Dravid, identical at 52.63%. Let's take a look at what the overall numbers here were. In terms of wins, Shastri and Dravid had 10, lost. Shastri had 7 tests that he lost. Dravid had 6. Shastri drew 2 matches, Dravid drew 3. So these were very, very commendable statistics, and I think that's where we should start our discussion. But let me just briefly say that in terms of key moments, Shastri won in South Africa, he won in Johannesburg, the Trent Bridge Test in England, Australia. Those were in fact fantastic numbers, and one more fantastic wins. But one more statistic, Anil Kumble 2016 to 2017, there were 12 wins under Kumble, 1 lost, 1 draw, 70.58 was his win percentage. Now, let's quickly go across and introduce our panel, and after I do that, I've got my colleague Rika with us as well. Joining us on the program, Deep Das Gupta, Sabah Karim, Akash Das Gupta, all brilliant cricketers. We've got Boria Mojumdar, Prakash Wakankar, Andrew Miller, and Seth Bennett. I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us. But first, let me go across to my colleague Rika, who's been tracking a lot of this. Now, Rika, the first question, where did India fall behind in this particular test match? Is it a case of perhaps not having a stable number 3 to bat, not just in this test match, but perhaps in the earlier one as well?
Well, good evening, Vishnu. Good evening to our panelists. We're talking about number 3. We have to do a deep dive into numbers. Vishnu, I'm not talking about Cheteshwar Pujara because that chapter has been over a couple of years ago. But let's talk about what has been happening since September 2024. Since then, we have had 7 batters who have batted at number 3 for India, including one batting great called Virat Kohli. We had Shubman Gill, Sai Sudarshan, Karun Nair, Washington Sundar, Devdutt Padikkal, and KL Rahul. Who has the highest test average among them? It is Virat Kohli. He clocks 35. Next to him is Shubman Gill at 33.4, which means none of the others really have been able to match that number 3 stature their predecessors had. And definitely it is a question of India lacking glue in the middle order, India lacking that credible number 3 and number 4 to be able to see them through long periods of test match batting.
Puriya Mojumdar, to the rather direct question on whether it is Gautam Gambhir who needs to be replaced now in the test format, how would you look at that?
No. If you say Gautam Gambhir will be replaced and everything will become hunky-dory, no. Gautam Gambhir is accountable, 100% yes. But Gautam Gambhir doesn't go and tell Yashasvi Jaiswal to not keep cutting balls which are close to his stump. The batsmen are. The bowlers are. The same bowlers allowed South Africa to score 500, and that includes a Kuldeep Yadav, a Jasprit Bumrah, who are world class. Yes, accountability has to fall on Gautam Gambhir's door in terms of team selection and some of the other calls. But the batters, they have to take responsibility for not scoring 124. Look, Vishnu, my point is a larger one. Gautam made this point in the press conference today about we have to prioritize test cricket. Now, my question is, how do you prioritize? You can't, because we are now a prisoner of our own doing. A Cheteshwar Pujara will earn 1/10 of what a Vaibhav Suryavanshi will earn from playing IPL. Now, why should the next generation prioritize? They will not. It's only natural that the market forces will rule. The future generations will prioritize white ball. We will continue to be a gun white ball side, but our red ball stocks will shrink. How do you change this? The only way to change this, and I've done a column for tomorrow, is BCCI should come out and say, you know what, the contract system is fundamentally redone. Anyone who is a red ball specialist will earn more than a white ball specialist. Anyone who plays test match cricket the whole season will be paid more than the IPL. The moment you prioritize red ball and you bring in money, which is way more than the IPL, or at least commensurate, you will see white ball and red ball coming at par. At this point in time, it's an unfair competition. Today you will see Gautam, tomorrow Dravid will come again, Shastri will come again. No god can come and take Indian red ball cricket to the same standard as white ball, as long as white ball forces, the market forces continue to support white ball cricket over red ball cricket.
It is a really important point, and let me go across to Andrew Miller for his comments on this. Andrew, the fact of the matter is that India are a superb side when it comes to T20s and one-day internationals. That's what's popular. The rate at which T20 has grown, the advent of IPL, has unfortunately meant that Test cricket might be suffering. A, do you agree with that Test cricket in the Indian context is suffering, and do you believe that needs to be fixed, as Boria suggested, through a change in contract terms?
Well, I mean, in theory, yes, but I mean, I don't think there's any way of putting that genie back in the bottle. I mean, we've seen what the IPL's done, we've seen what T20's done. It is the zeitgeist. It is what the younger generations want to watch. It's what the younger generations want to play. It's a sort of cricket they want to learn, want to hone. They want to be exciting cricketers. I mean, everyone knows how exciting Test cricket can be at its best. But if you're not trained, your techniques are not honed in that way to play that way, you've got to do it differently. I mean, I've spent a lot of time obviously watching England doing likewise with their Bazball mentality. It's a similar problem. England have got this situation where they have tried to play conventional cricket. We've seen what happens when they go out to India and play with straight bats and try to play spin by occupying the crease. It doesn't work. They don't have the techniques. They don't have the mentality to play the long game anymore. So they've gone the other way. They've gone harder and faster and tried to hit their way out of trouble, I suppose, in essence. And clearly, as we saw in Perth, it doesn't always work. But I don't think there's any way of changing the dynamics of the international game.
No, but that's a huge worry, isn't it, Sabah?
I think
if Sabah, the dynamics of
go backwards to go forwards.
Sure. If the dynamics of international cricket are being altered fundamentally, is this the beginning, in a sense, as far as India is concerned, the beginning of the end of that quality of Test cricket which we've been accustomed to, because the players in the side are fundamentally from a generation which favours limited overs cricket?
Well, Vishnu, that is understandable. We need to strike a balance somewhere. And if you see this shift taking place, it is us who need to rectify it. And when I say us, I mean BCCI. BCCI being the parent body, they need to prioritize Test cricket. Now, how to do it? For that matter, you need to draw a roadmap, and a lot of work needs to be done. But first up in my list is to accept that there is an issue. And the issue is that India as a Test side has fallen way down the ladder. And how do you come back from there? How do you change the system? Where have we gone wrong? All that needs to be addressed. Just by incentivizing or giving more incentives to Test cricketers, all that can come in later. But before that, we also need to look at our domestic structure. What kind of cricketers are we producing? What kind of wickets are we producing? That brings up cricketers who are competent to play not only in home conditions but also overseas conditions, Vishnu. And I think why is this? We raise a red flag here because after ages, we have seen the Indian Test side floundering in Indian conditions. It was a given fact that India at home was an unbeatable side. We were supposedly the final frontier. But somehow we have not been able to achieve that kind of result anymore. It is because of number of factors. One can talk about the recent flawed policy of the selectors. Why is it that we keep picking players on the basis of the white ball performance? Why is it that we neglect Ranji Trophy performance? There are so many cricketers or batters who have done well at the domestic level. Still, we give more preference to people who have done well in white ball cricket. So the problems are plenty, but I think we are able to, we can only find a practical solution if you're willing to accept there is an issue and then prepare a roadmap. And then that is why I stress on the fact that it requires an honest assessment, an honest conversation with all the stakeholders, including the team management, including the head coach, as well as people who are responsible in BCCI. Only then we can take it forward in order to prepare a roadmap, and then look at bringing in changes at the domestic structure that also includes financial incentives.
But Deep, just to that question, which I was asking Boria. The buck obviously does stop with the coach, but that's also being unfair. And so I admit my question may be a little unfair, but on the basis of statistics alone, it does seem to indicate that in Test cricket, Gautam Gambhir as coach has underperformed. Therefore, is there something wrong with his coaching technique? Is there any fault that can be attributed to him? Or is it purely our batsmen being unable to come to terms with this format?
Well, it's a mixture of a lot of things. I think it's not just, as Boria mentioned a while ago, it's unfair to kind of blame just the coach for it. The whole process has to be looked into. And also, this is a tricky period as well. You're talking about last couple of years, your main match winners have retired or we've moved on from some of them. And if you look at the last 10, 15 years, there was a set template of winning series at home. So you prepared a certain kind of pitches, Jadeja, Ashwin predominantly would pick the wickets, and then you had, Virat, Rohit, Pujara, Ajinkya scoring those runs. And now most of those guys have left, right? They're not part of the Test setup anymore. So we've got to be cognizant of that fact as well. We can't just not talk about it at all. This is a team in transition. There are new guys coming in. Yes, most of these guys are playing more white ball cricket. Now look at the preparation side of things as well. So we lost to New Zealand in October last year. New Zealand played in Sri Lanka in September, and then they came over in October to play India. So their prep was playing in Sri Lanka. before they played here in India. Now, same with South Africa. Before they came here, they were playing in Pakistan last month. So they drew that series in Pakistan last month, and then they came here. And now look at our prep. And now this is what we've got to be really careful about, is how are we preparing ourselves for home conditions as well. I mean, this is the same side. You take Shubman out of that side in England, this is almost the same side, right? Which drew that series, almost won that series. So these are the same guys who performed so well in England. And obviously, why I'm saying Shubman, because what, 750 odd runs in that series. So he obviously is a big miss. But then I think we've got to keep in mind a few things. And I think, like Saurabh said, there are quite a few things we can address and we need to address. And understand the fact that this is a team going through a transition. Coach, again, you know, it's comparatively easier to get into a team and start coaching a team which is well settled, right? You have all the settled side, you have a template in place, and you come in, right? But then now Gautam, you've got to give it to him. He's come in a time when, you know, all these top guys have retired or the team's moved on, and he needs to rebuild this size.
Yeah.
And the other important thing is, you know, making so many changes does not help anyone's cause.
Sure. Hold that thought deep. What I'd like to do now is actually take a look at some of the batting statistics that we've had in this series. So let's have graphic 3 up, as it were, and that just gives you an idea of how poorly we batted. The series batting average in this series against South Africa is 15.23. That's disgraceful. It's the lowest home series average since 1999. Centuries scored by Indian batters, 0. It's the first time in a home series since 1995, 1996, 30 years, right? The highest average, Washington Sundar. I think the world of him. I think he's a brilliantly versatile cricketer, but he's not your main batter, not one among your main batters. He's just a hard-working kid who somehow or the other done exceedingly well in this format, but just 30. And where are our top batsmen? They aren't even on this list. There's a collapse alert in this. There's bundled out for 140 and 201 in Guwahati were India in this test match, which is the heaviest test defeat by runs, 408. Rika, let me come to you next, and we'll come back to this statistic in just a moment on the individual batsmen. But the bottom line is, as a result of the performance against New Zealand and as a result of the performance over here, as far as the World Test Championship is concerned, we are falling way behind. Is that right?
That's right. We are at the halfway mark, having played 9 tests in this cycle already. Our percentage points are 48.15, and we are 5th in the order after Australia, South Africa, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan. Well, if you look at history, around halfway mark, you should have about 60% percentage points to be then able to make it to the final after the 2-year World Test Championship cycle. So yes, India is now very, very much behind the halfway mark that they should have been if they were to qualify for the World Test Championship final in 2027. And that's really going to be a worry because right now, you see, India doesn't play any test cricket for nearly 7 months. Then they go to Sri Lanka. They travel to New Zealand as well. And the next home series the next home series will be against Australia, and that is 13 months away. So India really has to redefine its strategy towards test cricket in the months that they are not playing the sport.
Akash, let me come to you next. If you look at our batsmen in this series and that number 3 position in a rows, because it's certainly in this test match and in the earlier test match as well, Shubman Gill's injury, so we don't really know how he would have performed. But are you happy with the picks that have been made? Is Sai Sudarshan ideally somebody who should be in this squad? Is that the ideal pick? And I ask this because not just number 3, but there are players like Sarfraz who've done incredibly well at the domestic level. Karun Nair has been a flop in England. But if you look at his series, his Ranji performance over the last couple of years, it's exceptional. So therefore, the pick of players, and that is something that goes down to the coach and the captain, was it correct, batting-wise?
Well, I don't think so, Vishnu, because I personally think that a number of things went wrong. I agree with a number of panelists on the show this evening. I believe that the Malays and Indian Test cricket runs quite deep. As far as the batting selection is concerned, it's a bit of a dichotomy, really, that we find ourselves in when it comes to Indian Test cricket these days, Vishnu, because on the one hand, overall in cricket, we've really evolved as a cricket playing nation. And of course, India has been at the forefront of global cricket for a really long time. But at the same time, we seem to have gone back and taken a few steps backwards, especially when it comes to the format that really matters, which is Test cricket. Yes, T20 cricket is driving market forces, and yes, ODI cricket will be around for as long as it's sustainable. But at the end of the day, it's Test cricket that really separates the wheat from the chaff, Vishnu. And ask any player worth his or her salt, and they will tell you that Test cricket is their favorite format. And there's a reason behind that, because when it comes to Test cricket, it is called Test cricket precisely because it tests you. Now, India has been over the last few months been failing the tests. The alarm bells have been ringing, and the biggest red flag is that they have been failing at home. India is not supposed to lose home test series. We have someone like a Kevin Peterson putting it out on social media saying, what is happening? India don't lose test series at home. So there's something that's really wrong here. When it comes to the batting, the question that you asked, Vishnu, I completely agree with Sababhai here, because I think we are failing to really dig into the vast resources that we are sitting on top of. We have this really robust domestic cricket structure when it comes to the long format. Why are we not looking at more players who are doing consistently well there? It seems like when I was talking about how we've taken a few steps backwards, what I meant, Vishnu, was that it seems like we are rotating and picking players from that same pool of about 20 to 25 to 30 players who are just there because they seem to be on the top of the list when it comes to our attention.
Okay, hold on a second, Akash. Deep has been furiously disagreeing, I think. Deep, go ahead.
No, I think there is a lot of talent, I believe. There is, no two ways about it. But I think we've got to differentiate between white ball talent and red ball talent. We need to find some good red ball talent. We have plenty white ball talent. We can field maybe 2, even 3 white ball teams at the same time. But I'm not too sure whether we have ready red ball talent who are ready to go on and play test match cricket. And we need to look for them. We need to start finding them. That's what I think. Listen, you can look at the scoreboard. Feel free to go to any of the websites, look at the averages, look at the scoreboard. But please try and figure out where, how they got those runs, what positions they got those runs, because you're looking at number 4 Shubman Gill, number 5 maybe Rishabh, 6 Jadeja, 7 Washington. So predominantly looking at a number 3. The names that you've taken so far are all middle order batters. So yeah, this is what I think.
Okay. Prakash, let me come to you next. If I was to turn that entire argument around and say that all of our panelists, so many of our panelists over here are saying that, and Boria has been, that, the structure of cricket has changed. Money has changed a lot of things. We are a prisoner of our own success in T20s and in one-day international. If I was to flip that argument and say that before Gautam Gambhir took over, or just 2024, keep Gambhir out of it, we seem to be doing extremely well in Test cricket. So how has the table completely turned in a period of 1 year where we are losing against New Zealand and South Africa? Other than Rohit and Kohli being in the side, and they aren't in the side presently, this entire crop of cricketers, many of them, certainly played Test cricket. Whether it's Shubman or Rahul or many of the others, Jadeja, Rishabh. So it's not as if Test cricket is alien to them at all.
Very true. And that being said, Vishnu, I think for a minute, if we just step back and think about what the opposition that has been touring India has been doing. I think Deep alluded to the kind of preparation New Zealand and South Africa had. I think teams realized that playing in India wasn't easy. India's own transition has played a role. But I, for one, in this particular 2-test series, have to bring out the fact that South Africa are world champions. I think maybe we took them a little bit lightly. They played out of their skins. Maybe we'll talk about that later in the program. But realistically, we've been outmaneuvered, outthought, and outplayed. To put the blame squarely on only the coach probably isn't being fair, as I think some of the panelists have said. But I think the fact that you are not applying yourself. Look, Kuldeep Yadav faced 182 balls from memory. And if that stays with me, that's probably the highest number of balls faced by any Indian batter in the entire test match in one innings. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
It is just not the application, the grind, the willingness to put your body and mind on the line, to play for that badge on your shirt. I think all of these things, and for me, honestly, the highlight of the game, India having lost, was Gautam Gambhir's press conference, because whatever happens, if some of the facts that Gautam brought out, and he talked about it in his own inimitable way, are thought through and implemented, we could well be on our way. I mean, England wasn't that far away.
No, it
Deep
wasn't.
and I were there,
We
saw
played
it.
superbly over there. You know, a young captain, a new coach, and then from that high to this, it's just as if they've gone to sleep and haven't woken up. I mean, it's unbelievable. Boria, I think another cause of concern is India's vulnerability to spin. Who would have thought that South African spinners were, gaining the upper hand against Indian batsmen in India?
Fair point. We don't play spin well. It is time to accept that in recent times we don't play spin well. And there is a reason to that, because if you see domestic cricket, and Sabha was alluding to it, you will see recent fast bowlers, and I don't want to name anybody here, people who bowl 125 and pick a bag full of wickets, because if you see the condition of domestic pitches, these guys now look like Malcolm Marshall and Joel Garner on Indian wickets, and put them in test match scenario, they will bowl 125 and get smashed, because that's the kind of domestic wickets that we've prepared. We do not prepare spinning wickets, we do not prepare turners anymore, because the focus has been to try and improve our away game, and in doing that, we've sacrificed that. On the other hand, there's a larger macro point also. Look at South Africa. Aiden Markram, Marco Jansen, Ryan Rickelton, Tristan Stubbs, each of these players, or England or Australia, these guys spend 2 to 2.5 months every year playing on Indian wickets. The aura of Indian wickets have gone because of the IPL, because of our white ball structure, and again the riches of our white ball cricket. These guys come to our shores and play their cricket. They master these conditions. They now know these conditions. They travel the country. And in our domestic cricket, we do not produce Washington Sundar and Simon Harmer. Simon Harmer is no Muralidharan or Shane Warne. He was bowling classical off spin. Washington Sundar, different variety. Why? Because Washington Sundar knows that come 2 days later in Ranchi, or for that matter IPL, he has to contain. That is the way these cricketers are growing up. You ask Prakash about what happened a year and a half back, that everything has changed. Of course it has changed. A Pujara, a Rahane, a Kohli, a Rohit Sharma and a Ravichandran Ashwin have retired. So of course things have changed in the last 1.5 years. Everybody of the current generation, a Sai Sudarshan played 150 balls, and that's where statistics kind of become pretty stupid at times. Out of the 150 balls, he could have gotten out in 50 of those deliveries. Did he look convincing to you? The answer is no. He tries to play every ball. Why? Because when he goes to play the IPL, he tries to leave every ball. He will not be batting at number whatever for the Gujarat Titans. Cricket is also about muscle memory. It is about white ball cricket, which is priority, which is driven by the market. And Akash's argument, look, we are all purists here. We will talk about cricket as being royalty and all. Who says so? Tomorrow Yashasvi Jaiswal will walk alongside Cheteshwar Pujara. We know who the masses will go to. So who are we to decide that the market forces are not relevant? So this thing about test cricket is priority and white ball is not the case. There has to be balance struck, and we need to evolve out of being prisoners of our own doing in white ball cricket.
Now, Boria, you're breaking my heart. I love only Test cricket. I think T20 is awful to watch. But if this is the reality, then perhaps we're getting seriously old now.
Look, I think this panel is a minority. It is a minuscule minority. Each one of us will watch our red ball. And for me, T20 is a pack of highlights. But we are not the mass. We are not the ones to pay.
No, I take your point. It's an unfortunate reality. Seth Bennett, there's another argument which is raised that in terms of the pick of the Indian squad, I'm not just talking about 11, but players in the 15, you've got too many all-rounders. So you've got Jadeja, Washington, Aksar and Nitish Kumar Reddy, when in the context of red ball cricket, you would perhaps need more bowlers or more frontline batsmen. Washington, great guy, is not your frontline batsman. Neither perhaps is Nitish Kumar Reddy a frontline bowler. So is that something India needs to look at more? Andrew, can you hear me?
One of those things where you have.
Sorry, to me, yes, I partly agree. I think it's a weird sort of neither one thing nor the other for India to go down the all-rounders route. I think they've got such a strong stock of good batsmen, and I'm surprised they've gone that way. I mean, if you look at I can only really lean back into what England have done of late, but England have really gone into looking for their best 7 batsmen, including Jamie Smith as a wicketkeeper, and they're pure fast bowlers. They've really gone out of their way to find proper bowlers who can provide something different to Test cricket that you wouldn't get from just having an all-rounder doing that role. When you've got someone like Jasprit Bumrah leading the line, obviously you don't need to worry usually, but he needs support. And I think, yes, leaning into something more robust than just the diet of all-rounders all the way down the order is probably the way to go for them.
I just wanted to go back to Prakash for a second and ask a question that really must be asked, because I think Andrew raises an important point that, Bumrah needs support as well. Siraj has done well over a period of time. I don't think our woes are really bowling. It's more about batting. But if we are to talk about bowling for a moment, where is Mohammad Shami? He's a popular cricketer. People are asking. And people aren't convinced about him not being in the squad. So let's bring up this graphic, and before I go across to Prakash, and talk about his performances. So let's bring up the next graphic, which actually shows Mohammad Shami. Let's have that graphic up on the screen. So Mohammad Shami, why isn't he playing in Ranji Trophy 2025-2026, representing Bengal in 4 matches? He's got 20 wickets at an average of 17.5, an economy rate of 2.59, considering his record in international cricket, and the fact that he says that if I've lasted, in Ranji cricket as I have, and here are my performances, why isn't he in the squad, Prakash?
Well, it's one of those mysteries, isn't it, Vishnu? I mean, you think about it, the stats don't lie always, but the opposition and the conditions in which he's performed will obviously have a factor. His injury seems to be an issue, but the lack of transparency, which is an overall challenge with the BCCI and its administrators in communicating with press, with the general fans, has been a problem for a long time. We don't know why he is not being considered. We don't know why Sarfaraz is not in the side. Till Shreyas Iyer had his injury, we didn't know why he wasn't being picked. Why you mentioned Karun Nair, I think, earlier. So there is a need to understand that Test cricket is Test cricket and will require specialists to do the job. Let's not forget, I think, in my view, India lost the game in Guwahati on day 2, allowing the South Africans to get from 260 odd to 489. The last 4 batters got 250 plus runs. And then on day 4, our spinners, Kuldeep included, weren't able to roll over the South Africans. Not that we would have won the game necessarily, but I think the malaise is deeper. There's a combination of all of these factors that our panelists have talked about, which needs to be looked at. It's almost like going back and saying, all right, from here on in, what am I going to do as the BCCI to try and bring Indians Test cricket back? I don't think it's all doom and gloom. I think it's a question of whether or not we can get 11 guys with the heart to play and grind it out, knowing that it's not a slam, bam, wham.
Sabat, before I move on, just on the issue of Mohammad Shami, do you believe he should have been playing?
Well, not playing, but actually in the squad, I expected Mohammad Shami to be there. Right now, both Bumrah and Siraj have performed very well. And the kind of surface that we saw in both the test matches, you possibly couldn't have played with another seamer. So yes, not in the 11, but absolutely in the 15. Vishnu, the way I look at it, there are 2 pressing issues here. Number 1 is when we talk about prioritizing Test cricket, that's a long-term plan that BCI needs to address. The other is how to look at the immediacy of the issue of losing matches at home. And I think to a large extent, one also has to look at the policy that we have seen from the selectors, including the team management. For instance, everybody talks about specialist batters, specialist skill players in the 11. We didn't see that in the last two test matches. I mean, look what transpired at Eden Gardens. I did the pitch report on the first day. I have played number of games at the Eden Gardens for so many years. I have yet to see a drier surface than what I saw in that test match. So on a wicket like that, why would you play six bowlers? Why couldn't we pick some more batters? Even here, for that matter, why would you pick Nitish Reddy ahead of Devdutt Padikkal, who's a specialist batter? So some kind of accountability has to go across to the selectors as well as the team management. That there was some issue in not picking the right kind of combination. That's how you can deal with whatever has happened now. And as we go forward, then as I said, it's so important that BCCI looks at this and think of issues how to deal with this. And I go back to 2012, 2013, Vishnu. The reason why we started to do well in Sena country is because BCCI had this terrific idea of preparing a grassy surface, pace-friendly wickets in India, and I think all that helped. So all such cricketers who came in that decade, they started to do well whenever India travel outside outside the Asian subcontinent. Similarly, now we need to find a balance so that we also prepare wickets that are conducive to spin bowlers, so that we are able to, number one, develop specialist spin bowlers, also batters who can play on those tracks. So I think overall we need to look at this issue in both these ways.
All right, we're going to be back in just a few moments. Seth Bennett, sports commentator and head of sports and journalism at Sheffield Hallam University with us. We'll come to him in a moment, but first, a quick word from our sponsors. Welcome back. We're looking at India's test performance in the series against South Africa, which we've lost. We've also lost that series earlier against New Zealand at home. India was supposed to be champions in test cricket at home. What's going wrong? Seth Bennett, sports commentator with us. Seth, there are so many things. Firstly, questions on the coach, questions on the ability of India to play spin bowling in India, and of course the entire structure of cricket in the country, which seems to favor limited overs cricket. Is there any one fault or one reason why Indian test cricket in India seems to be suffering?
Well, I think there's lots of different things, and the success of the IPL is one of them, because the success of the IPL has meant that India's doors have been wide open now for well over a decade for players coming in and getting used to not only being in India and playing on Indian surfaces, but all the noise that comes around cricket in India. It's now common for them, isn't it? They spend a period of each year, the best players in the world, playing in India. So what used to be a period of culture shock, a period where they struggled to deal with the conditions, be that the environmental conditions or be that the pitches that they played on, now all of a sudden they're experiencing that, and there is a level of comfort. And to be honest, going to India these days, it's not a bad experience by any stretch of the imagination. There's wonderful hotels, there's good stadiums, there's good pitches, there's good infrastructure around the cricket world because there's so much money in it. So I think that is part of the scenario with playing in India right now. I think the other thing, though, is something that the coach said, Gautam Gambhir. He talked about the fact India are in a period of transition. And it's not one player, it's not peripheral players, it's some of the greatest players that have ever played the game that are now starting to move on from that squad. And within that vacuum, all of a sudden, you lose leadership, you lose experience, and the reliance, in recent times on the ability of that bowling group to drag India through when the batting didn't necessarily always fire. Well, on the Indian surfaces, they weren't able to deliver those performances. And that was one of the things that was interesting. Just looking at that last test match, look at the scoring rates of the two teams. Really, really hard for me to understand how India are scoring at just over 2.5 runs and over in their own conditions. When you look at what the South Africans they were doing, they were not quite double that, but they were scoring consistently 3.5 plus all the way through the test match. And I think, again, that has a really, really big impact.
It does indeed, Seth. Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts, being with us on this program this evening. We're out of time. We're going to take a short break at this stage. There's a lot more coming up, but I think there will be many more questions asked about Indian red ball cricket and its future. We leave it there. From all of us here, good night.